Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Now, are you feeling like you're kind of stuck? You're not sure why you're meant for something better than this, but you just can't seem to get out of the mindset of survival mode almost. It's like you've reached some kind of plateau. And what is it that happens when we get to midlife? Sometimes we hit these kinds of walls. And what's it take to actually get back to feeling ourselves again? Well, my guest today is a two-time national champion, a former All-American linebacker, and a Sports Illustrated cover athlete. Now, he himself has been through his own challenges with chronic pain and hitting his own wall, but that led him to develop the Neuro Flow Method, which blends neuroscience and flow state training to help people overcome pain and get back to peak performance. And now he works with entrepreneurs, athletes, high performers to help them reclaim who they are at their core. And he's going to help you do exactly the same and share how maybe Neuro Flow Method could be the answer to your prayers. Welcome to the show, Brandon Day.
Hey, Julia, thank you. What a wonderful intro.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here. I feel very blessed that you've come to join us today, and I'm excited to find out all about Neuro Flow Method because this is something that's quite new to me as well, and find out how it works. Before we get into all of this, obviously we want to talk about plateaus and all this and how you overcome this and how maybe normal methods don't actually work. But before we get into that, so I want to share with us your kind of journey from being an athlete, and now you're this sort of coach, I guess, and sort of how this all came together for you, your own journey through pain and being, like as I said, a high performer yourself, and then how that developed you to be into developing sort of Neuroflow method and going through that journey.
Sure. Yeah. I'd be happy to. Who doesn't love talking about themselves,
Of
right?
course, this show's all about everyone else, not about me.
Well, for me, it all started really when I was very young. Started with sports, and I played pretty much all the sports I could handle. I think at many points in my life when I was a young boy and young man, I was playing 3 or 4 different sports at the same time. It just like was all consuming. It was school and sports, and that was about it. And it really, was such a huge factor in my development as a human being, right? I'm very grateful for sports, team sports, in particular, but all sports for how they have helped shaped my brain and my mindset and my drive and all these great things. But, it led me to a lot of also poor behaviors or compensations or other things, coping mechanisms that didn't serve me very well later in life, which we'll get to that, I'm sure. But, the good part first, right? I experienced a lot of success in sports, and not only individually did I have some success, I was an All-American linebacker, as you mentioned, and I personally was, put on the cover of Sports Illustrated. A photo of me was chosen for the cover of Sports Illustrated, which, if anybody's not aware that's listening, which is pretty rare that people aren't aware of Sports Illustrated, but it's a globally recognized and very respected sports journalism
Yeah.
magazine.
Anyone who knows their sports would have heard of Sports Illustrated. I think.
Right, yeah, which is why it's so wild that I ended up on the cover of that magazine.
Mm.
Of all magazines, it was that one, right? And it was really especially wild because I played for a college football team in Montana, where I'm from, that was very small. We played in the NAIA, which is a separate organization than the NCAA. Most people don't even realize that there is more than one organization that does college sports. But the NAIA has been around for just as long, but it's mostly made up of private, usually religious affiliated institutions, colleges across the country, and they're usually very small, and they don't have big endowments, and sports is generally not their first priority. Go figure, right? So a lot of us were there, competitive wise, people always ask, it usually gets lumped in kind of at the same level as Division II in the NCAA.
Okay.
So as far as competition goes, the caliber of athletes, that kind of stuff. So in the NAIA, we were playing for the love of the sport to get some school paid for, right? But most of us weren't really looking for NIL money, which wasn't a thing back then, or the glory and the glitz and the glamour. We just wanted to go play competitively at a higher level and have some fun while we did it. And the team that I played for, called Carroll College in Montana, by the time I got there, they were a pretty well-respected and accomplished team. When I was a true freshman in 2005, we won the national championship, and that was their 4th in a row. So they were steaming. They were in some pretty good momentum at that point, and we carried that through all throughout my college career. I ended up with 54-3, 54 wins, 3 losses in my college career. I played in 3 national championships. We won 2 of them. We lost the last one when I was a senior. I was elected captain my senior year, All-American, Sports Illustrated, all that good stuff. Great success, and it was incredible in so many ways. And then came somewhat of a downfall, as any good hero's journey does, right?
I don't know of any athlete that hasn't had some kind of fall or downfall of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes maybe athletes, just in a very broad sense, they maybe a sharper rise and fall. Maybe anybody in the public eye, or thinking like celebrities or anyone that's very successful in anything that they do. I always say that the brightest light creates the darkest shadow. So what I mean by that is, from my example, being on the cover of Sports Illustrated was it was an incredible experience. It was completely unexpected, very wild, but I was kind of thrust a little bit into a spotlight that I wasn't really prepared for and did not expect in any way. And it wasn't like I was like, everywhere I go, everyone recognized me, really like that. But around my hometown and around, the state of Montana, people knew who I was. Being like wholly unprepared for that, and more of a reserved and introverted person by nature, with a background of mental health issues and struggles, being thrust into that was very discombobulating for
Hmm.
me. And on the one hand, it was really amazing that you're getting this adoration from these strangers, and it feels really good. I can understand the allure of fame and celebrity. But on the other hand, if you have mindset issues around maybe your self-worth, these days the term imposter syndrome gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And that pretty well describes some of the feelings that I experienced after being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Was just this idea that, like, me personally, I was like, I don't know if I really deserve this. Like, what did I actually do? And then you just kind of spiral. And it was really hard for me. I can't speak for everybody. It kind of highlighted some of the insecurities that I already had going on. And so that's why I say that bright light can shine or can create a dark shadow. And for me, it led to more behavioral issues and more substance abuse and more coping mechanisms that I was still very young at 21 years old and wasn't really willing to do the work, or didn't know how to do the work to kind of work through that.
Mhm.
I didn't have a therapist at that time. And as a macho guy playing college football, didn't think I needed therapy. I just needed another, Bud Light, cure all my problems, right? So there was that. And there's also the other side of it. Like, I was playing a pretty violent sport in American football, and that led to a lot of pain and injuries. And so the pain that I was experiencing day to day, I would choose to self-medicate through substances or dopamine and distraction or whatever I could get my hands on. And then you add in kind of the mental health part of it and the insecurities, and then throw on top of that I'm going and smashing my head against other grown human beings, and like getting in a car crash every day for, a few years. It kind of adds up. It kind of adds up. And it's kind of sneaky in a lot of ways. Like, chronic pain can be sneaky. These subconcussive hits to the head can be sneaky. You see this in construction workers that work a jackhammer all day, or even like soccer athletes or military personnel that are around, explosions quite often. They have these little jostles to their brain, shakes it around in their head. And over time, that can lead to changes that can be kind of sneaky, that if you're not like on top of it and aware of it, then one day, a few years down the road, you kind of wake up and you're like, what happened to me? My behavior's different. I'm having all these weird symptoms that seem like they came from nowhere, and I'm not where I think I should be right now. And it's like this invisible block. I don't know what it is. So I say all that because it can be sneaky. However, sometimes we are blessed with, this is going to sound so weird, but we're blessed with like a big event that just knocks you off your high horse and says, here you go, here's a gift. Now you need to work through this. You need to figure this out. And there's a guy named Stuart McGill. He's a researcher on back disorders and the spine from Canada. He wrote a book called The Gift of Injury. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here, that sometimes those insidious little things, like all the little hits to the head, that we say, it's no big deal. The little chronic pains, like, I just got a bum knee. It just hurts. It's no big deal.
Hmm.
It's annoying, but The little things every day that just pull you out of being your best self are leading you down towards a self that you won't even recognize, right? A few years down the road. But if you get the gift of some big smack to the face that says, then you're like, you get that gift of awareness. Like, oh, there is something wrong here. I need to change this. And then you change and you move in the other direction. Beautiful. That's why it's a gift. And for me, that gift was the Sports Illustrated. It was a gift because it was an amazing experience. It was also a gift because it showed me, wow, you got some stuff to work through, buddy. Like your mindset is wacko. It took me some years to kind of really become aware of it, but it showed those things had to come to the surface. And then the pain too, that was a little trickier one because I was raised in a culture that kind of glorified the idea of pushing through pain. Pain is weakness leaving the body. No pain, no gain, right? Just push through it. And I did. And, me and my buddies, we were pretty good at that until there was a major injury. Then you got to do something about it. But for me, I never really had a major injury. I just had bad knees, bad ankles, weak ankles. I had a bad back. I had a stinger in my neck that like made my arm go numb. And then now I have arthritis and bulging discs. But it's okay. I can still do all the things that I want to do. I just have a little bit of pain here and there. But what people don't realize is that even that little bit of pain is enough to distract you from going all in on anything that you're doing, whether that's a conversation that you're having or the work that you're trying to complete or the game that you're trying to play, the training that you're trying to get done. And what that really takes you away from, I know I'm jumping around a little bit here,
No,
so
it's fine.
stop me anytime.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you got questions or feel free. What it really takes you away from, which I learned a little later on in my journey, was that it pulls you out of, or it blocks rather, your entry into what we call the flow state. And this to me, when I learned what this was, it was a defining moment in my life. I read a book by a guy named Steven Kotler, incredible author and journalist that followed around action and adventure sport athletes for many years. Wrote this book called The Rise of Superman. And it was all about how these action and adventure sport athletes, rock climbers, motocross riders, downhill skiers, big mountain skiers, stuff like that, surfers, how they were accomplishing impossible feats in very short periods of time. Like one example I think of that I remember clearly in my life when I was like, what is happening? This is crazy, was a guy named Mike Metzger did a backflip on a dirt bike, like a 400-pound dirt bike. He
Right.
up in the air did a full backflip, the first one ever. I don't remember what year it was, but I was, a young man, maybe middle school. And then this guy named Travis Pastrana comes along like 2 months later and does a double backflip. I was like, how did we get from, 50 years of these dirt bikes and the development and this kind of jumping and going a little bit further and a little bit higher, doing these little tail whips, and then you do a backflip. It took so long to get to that, and then we do a double? What? How does that happen, right? Well, he explained this, that it's all about the flow state, which is this altered state of consciousness. Most would consider it an optimal state of consciousness, where we feel and perform our best, where we are so absorbed in the task at hand that everything disappears. Time goes away.
Well, is this the thing, do you think, with most people, is they're just not aware, are they not just not aware of this flow state? Or is it something that they're resisting? I mean, I've gone through things myself, and I'm realizing as I get older that I was constantly resisting stuff all the time on some level, subconsciously or whatever. And is this why people hit this wall for whatever reason? It's because they're just not aware, and it's this unknown resistance that's going on that's not enabling them to just relax and go with it?
Yes. So you used a few words that are so powerful for this. Number one is awareness. And that's what I'm talking about. When I became aware of it, blew open the doors for me. I was like, oh my goodness, that's what I've been missing. That's what I lost after football ended. Because the thing about football is there is no pickup games. I can't go to the park and just jump into a game of tackle football. That doesn't happen. When you're done, you're done. You might be able to play flag football, but it's really not the same. It's not even the same game. So I lost it, and I lost access to flow states, which I realized when I read that book. So the awareness that's 80% of the journey. And that's why I'm so passionate about educating people on it and just telling people about it, because when you become aware of it, you can't put that genie back in the bottle, and it's out there, and that anyone can access this at any time. right?
And I think we get too caught up in the problem we're in, whether it's the pain that's holding us back, or whether maybe I always think that sometimes we keep ourselves in pain because in some odd way it's benefiting us. We're not
Mm,
we're not going to
yeah,
say, if someone said, "Oh, you're benefiting from this," you go, "No, you're crazy. I hate being in pain." But maybe there's something else going on below the surface that's preventing us from breaking that plateau, moving forward in wherever we want, getting us out of this stuck cycle of being stuck
sure.
all the time.
It's
That in some
classic
ways,
self-sabotage,
being
yeah.
where we are, exactly, being where we are is kind of, we don't like it consciously, but it's kind of almost comfortable for us. So we're not prepared to do the
Exactly.
things because doing the things we have to do to break forward can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. So your brain is a efficiency machine, and it always wants to choose safety and comfort over growth
Mm.
because growth is pain. Change is pain. Maybe pain's not the right word, but change is hard and it costs resources. And your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy, especially when your brain is like overwhelmed, overloaded, and you're stuck in kind of that survival brain. It's hogging all the resources, and any kind of change or stepping outside of your comfort zone, which is where growth happens, which is where flow happens, by the way, that's costly and that's scary and it's hard, and your brain would rather not do it.
And it's
Yeah.
about letting
So
go.
it's hardwired in us.
Is having that sort of
Yeah.
strength of mind, strength of character, whatever it may be, is to actually just let go and let it be without trying to grab hold of it. That's almost security blanket, even though it's not serving you.
Yeah, 100% back to that self-sabotage. And I'll make a confession right now. I used pain as a excuse to like avoid like training sometimes because workouts were hard. Like it did hurt doing all these squats and heavy deadlifts and power cleans for football was a little bit painful. And so sometimes when I was feeling tired and just didn't want to do it, I'd be like, no, coach, my knee is just bugging me today. Really, it feels the same as yesterday. And it's the same pain. And I know I'm not going to hurt myself, right? But it was more comfortable to just say that the pain was, what it was and
Yeah.
avoid the training,
Was that
right?
also a bit of the self-medication you spoke about earlier as well kicking in? It was like, it was sort of stealing your energy and your focus, because everything, people
Yeah.
when they turn to sort of things like alcohol and stuff like that, it sort of blurs everything. So you're not as clear, you're not as alert as and as energized as you would otherwise normally, because it affects things like sleep and all the other things as well.
Yeah, yeah. I look at the substances that I used and abused in my life now as a brain and nervous system coach, really as self medication and self regulation. So I was diagnosed as adult onset ADHD.
Hmm.
I was prescribed Adderall in college, and I used nicotine and caffeine to get myself up, to get going, to bust through the pain and the fatigue, which, by the way, these are all just signals from your nervous system and your brain that something is a little off, right? Fatigue is a brain derived emotion. And that's not me making stuff up. That's literally the title of an article by a guy named Timothy Noakes who discusses this in detail. Wonderful read for anybody that likes scientific research. But it's an output that your brain is using to get you to slow down, to get you to calm down, to get you to chill out, to change something that it views as threat, right? So the fatigue that I experienced, the chronic pains, the anxieties, these type of things, I would use those uppers, we might call them, to upregulate myself to get going. And those were useful until I got a little bit too spun up. And so then I would use the alcohol or the cannabis to bring it back down. And it was just a constant roller coaster using these exogenous substances to try to regulate my system. And not the healthiest way to do things, right? But it got me through, right? Until I could kind of learn a little bit more about myself, gain a little more awareness, and find better tools.
Mm.
So there was the self-medicating because of the pain. Like you said, the pain is such a powerful signal, and it's such a distracting, and it's such a good signal. Like pain, I hate to give pain a bad rap because it's so important.
Well, it's kind of like a
And I would
warning
rather,
signal. It's giving you a little poke saying, hang on a minute, you need to stop and
yeah,
check this out.
exactly. And that's all it is.
Mm.
We don't have to put judgment on it. Like it's not good or bad. It just is. And I would much rather have pain than not have any pain ever. That's a very dangerous place to be, right? Because if you don't have that signal, then you are in grave danger
Mm.
because you're not going to know when something is wrong.
So in terms of
And if you don't know,
having this pain and you're just ignoring it all the time, and you become so used to the pain that it's not really affecting you in the same as someone else who suddenly was in an acute state of pain. When you're in a chronic state of pain, you're almost like used to it, so you can live with it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean more so in this sense of pain. Like if I lean my hand on a hot stove, the pain is what's going to tell me you need to remove your hand. If I don't, and I wait until I smell the burning flesh,
Mm.
that's a problem, right? So it's more important in the acute phase. The chronic phase, there's an ongoing problem, right, that we need to address. And it gets a little bit trickier. It gets a little bit trickier because we got to find where the threat is coming from. And when you start understanding how the brain works, that threat could be coming from anywhere. In my experience, a lot of times the threats that people aren't aware of or that they're not dealing with usually are happening above the neck. And I don't mean in their mindset, although that's a part of it, but more so I mean like in the body above the neck, like literally in their brain, maybe imbalances in brain activation or with their inner ear or their eyes, which are sending so much information to your brain every moment about your environment that they are big opportunities for threats and also big opportunities for removing threats and therefore reducing pain, increasing performance. But back to your original thought, the distraction and the amount of energy that is being stolen from you with this signal just constantly on all the time with chronic pain. People just don't understand how much that is affecting their life because it seems so innocuous and because they seem like I deal with it fine. I'm just getting older. I just have a little back pain. It's okay. But if we think about flow states and that state of optimal performance and enjoyment and fulfillment, like flow states are when we feel most like ourselves and we're so engrossed in the activity, it becomes autotelic. So we do the activity just for the sake of doing it, just for the enjoyment of doing it, regardless of the outcome. If we're missing out on that part of our life, then we are missing out not only on a lot of enjoyment and happiness and fulfillment, but also in productivity and success and advancement. The person in flow, even once a week is going to be 500% more productive than the person who doesn't experience it.
Yeah.
So they can get done in one day what one person can do in a week.
Yeah.
So extrapolate that out. And by the way, that's coming from the McKinsey Institute, consultants that studied executives over a 10-year period. And that's what they reported, is that in flow, they were 500% more productive at least.
Yeah.
The University of Sydney found 430%, I think, faster and more creative problem solving in flow. The Department of Defense and DARPA in the United States found that soldiers learning a shooting task would learn it something like 250% faster than those that didn't experience flow states. So everything is accelerated. And it doesn't matter what you're learning, doesn't matter what you're trying to do. Flow will help you do it better, learn it faster. So imagine over a year's time missing out on those flow states. And a while ago, you mentioned a couple things that were so powerful for us to be aware of. First was the awareness of flow states, right?
Yeah.
And then you said a couple things like blocking ourselves or not, like, I don't remember the exact words you words, but like not pushing through.
Yeah.
And there's such an important piece there because flow happens in a cycle. Just like we have sleep cycles, just like we have
I think it was
moon
resistance. I think
cycles.
I
And
said what you're resisting,
yes,
so you get stuck.
exactly. So in this flow cycle, there are 4 stages. The first stage is the struggle phase. Then we have a release phase, and then we get into flow, and then we have to recover. That's the 4. But the most important one is struggle, because every flow state requires a struggle at the beginning. And this is where most people run into trouble because they are not aware that they're in this struggle phase. And so they push themselves to the point of frustration and then they quit and they go do something else.
Well, that's the thing. You tend to, because you think, right, you've got in your mind, you've got to do all these other things, whether it's going to the gym or getting a trainer, getting a therapist, whatever it is, you think you're doing all the right thing and you're pushing and nothing is shifting. And you think, well, I've just got to try harder. But that can sometimes have the opposite effect of what you need. And it comes back to that letting go and just saying, okay, well, now I need to relax and take a step back and think about the easier way or think of the best way forward. I'm simplifying it here. Yeah, it's kind of, why is it people feel that they need to push through? and then what they need to understand about that, that's not working for them, and then how they get into this flow state from that, because obviously, like we said before, there's some resistance going on.
Yeah. So let's kind of tease apart two different ideas here. One idea is over a little bit longer period of time that we continue to push and try to just like force our way through. And I come from like the strength and conditioning world. So I often bring it back to, those kind of principles. But there is this principle of cycles of training. You don't go run a marathon every day. That's not going to go well for your joints, right? You're going to end up getting injured. So we go through, there's different styles of how to do this, but we go through cycles. Think about a sport. We have a season, and then we have an off season where we rest, recover, and then we go back into training, and then we push, and try to create our peak body and performance. And then we kind of taper off, and then we're at our peak when we go into the season, and we try to maintain that throughout the season and not drop off too much.
So it's
That's
almost
kind of
like
like,
you're breaking stuff down, building it back up, recovering, and then going back almost.
yeah, exactly. So we call those like macro cycles,
Yeah.
longer periods of time. And what you're kind of alluding to is most people, they don't have those in their work life or in like, I'm a
They tend to
father
think, oh,
of,
it's something for athletes, professional athletes, or serious, amateurs, if you like. But they don't think that you can apply it to your own life as well, and it can be really beneficial.
yeah. Which is why I call my company Evolved Athlete. And you and I had talked about this before, is that I treat everyone like an athlete. I don't care what you do or where you are in life, or I don't care if you're an 80-year-old retired person, that your sport is just going on cruises all over the world. Great, good for you. Or a professional athlete that's playing professional cricket in Australia or professional football in America. Doesn't matter. I treat everyone the same because we're all playing the sport of life, and we all need to go through and approach this sport as an athlete with the athletic mindset, and also in our training. So in your physical training and in your work training and career training, we should always be going through cycles, because that's how our biology is built. Everything is cycles.
Yeah,
Right? We've got daily
if anything
cycles.
else, is particularly when you get to your
Yeah.
midlife, man or a woman, you're going through a cycle. Like you say, your whole life, every change you go through from your youth to your old age is a change. It's a different cycle, a different time of life.
Yep. And you've got these big, huge cycles on the scale of like the precession of the equinoxes. That's like 30,000 years, not quite, but of the earth and how it tilts and all that stuff. And you come down, you've got like the cycle of a life, right? And then you've got the cycle of like fertility and menopause in women and menopause
Yeah.
in men, right? Then
I
you've
always forget
got,
about that, don't they? Men do go through, it's actually called andropause, and they go through that as well.
yeah. Yeah, andropause, exactly. So you've got those cycles all the way down to the moon cycles and the menstrual cycles, all the way down further to circadian rhythms and diurnal cycles. And then you've got even smaller cycles. Think sleep cycles. These are called ultradian rhythms, that are much smaller, like 90 to 120 minutes generally. We have like 4 or 5 of these a night,
Didn't know
ideally.
that.
Yeah. So flow states work the same way, by the way. That's why I bring them up, is because a normal flow state generally is on a like 90 to 120 minute cycle. That's a micro flow state, a smaller flow state, and we can extrapolate that out to. I use an example of like an author. Maybe I'm writing a piece and I spend a couple hours and I get into a flow state, and I go through the whole cycle, and then I kind of come out of it, and then I got to recover. That's like a daily thing, and I might have 1, 2, maybe even 3 of those in a day. That'd be awesome, right? And then you've got a bigger cycle of, like, say you're writing a whole book, where maybe the first couple months is a struggle phase, because you're gathering research, doing interviews, you're doing all of this reading of all these things, and it's frustrating. You're trying to figure things out. And then you finally kind of get into that flow. And then, months 3 through 7 of writing this book are just like magic, right? So you can go through on a macro scale a flow state as well. But the point of it is that we need to be aware of those cycles, especially in like the corporate world and outside of sports, because it's built into sports a lot of times because we got seasons. But we don't really have that in the business world for corporate athletes or cognitive athletes. But we really need that. We need to go through cycles of work and then release and recover, right? So there is a framework that I actually like that's as old as time. And it's called hedonic engineering. And it's really built around kind of these different ways that we can use ecstatic states or different consciousness kind of shifting or nervous system shifting techniques to kind of do this nervous system reset or recover. And the traditional way that it's used is like every week we do a kind of a big reset, think like a religious, like the Sabbath in Judaism, or you go to church on Sunday, and Sunday is kind of meant for that,
Yeah.
right? Or if you're not a religious person, you just have a day where you take a day each week and you just relax and you just do your meditation and you just kind of do your sauna and that kind of thing. And then, once a quarter, you have a longer, maybe a 3-day, trip where you go out and it's all about rest and relaxation and kind of reevaluating things and finishing the cycle,
Mm.
so to speak. And then maybe once a year, you have a longer week or 2 weeks where you go do a silent retreat or you go do, for some people, maybe it's you go hike to Everest Base Camp. I don't know. But you schedule these things in a cyclical pattern. And if you can use kind of that framework with your business, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're in a corporate setting, C-suite executive or middle manager or blue collar worker, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you can kind of work those in, then you're going to be more refreshed. You're going to maintain a higher level of performance over the long haul instead of trying to push through,
Do you think
right?
in today's environment, I guess, it just seems like everything, I mean, when I was younger, you didn't have technology in this way. So you had the Sundays were always a day, everything was closed, you couldn't do anything, you were forced into that day of rest. And now with
Yeah.
everything constant, 24 hours at you, you've forgotten. And is it time that we need to get back to that state of, like you say, of at least having one point in your cycle, in your week or whatever it is, where you just have that rest and it's focus on yourself inwardly, sorry, or something like that to help reset.
Yeah. I think you're 100% correct that it's much harder these days because we have so many distractions that are just vying for our attention all the time. And
And it's
we're
very
really
quick to
in an
take you out of that flow state as well. You could be in a flow state and then you would be distracted.
So actually, this is such a good, I'm so glad you said that, Julia, because that goes back to the original other thing that we were talking about. You have this longer term trying to push through, which usually ends in burnout,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Trying to always push through. But then on a shorter scale, think of just one flow cycle in that struggle phase. Most people don't make it through the struggle phase because they push, but they don't realize that that frustration is actually a good thing. And they need to just let it go to find flow. They need to push a little bit harder and stay in it for just a little bit longer, and they will get the reward of flow states. But what most people do is they go, but it gets hard and that challenge becomes too much. They're not aware of what's on the other side. And so they quit. And what the cardinal rule of flow states in the struggle phase is that you cannot go distract yourself with some other kind of cognitive task or distraction like social media,
Well, I think sometimes
which
it's
is,
what, yeah, I think sometimes as well, it's that when you're sat, silence with no distraction, it's like almost you can become anxious, you can become fearful because it's uncomfortable sitting with your own thoughts because things can come up, but you kind of have to go through that to come out the other side.
well, that's a great way to kind of rebalance your dopamine, which is kind of what we're talking about here.
Mm.
The ability to be bored is a lost art, and we could all use a little bit more boredom in our lives and comfort in boredom. And what you're talking about with those racing thoughts and that kind of stuff, that's a thing for sure. In this idea of struggle phase and then flow, there is that place in between called release. And it's really important. Ned Hallowell, I think is his name, is a author. He wrote a book called The Breakout Principle. It's all about this release phase. And it's this tiny spot in between struggle and flow where we have to let go of the problem. What you cannot do is go distract yourself, but you also don't need to just sit in boredom. The best thing you can do is actually get out of your head and into your body. Go for a walk, go sit in a sauna, take a shower, right? Play some music.
Yeah, because actually
Do
I did want to
anything.
ask you sort of, how people get themselves into this flow state. So it's great that you're
Yeah.
bringing this in.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about triggers after this, but if you know where you're at in the cycle, then you know what's coming next, and then you know what you can do. So if you're really struggling hard, and it works for everything, right? So whether it's a problem that I'm cognitively trying to solve, or whether it's a workout and I'm trying to like get myself amped up and I'm going through my warm up, or a sport or a game or anything, even a conversation, right? Where you're going back and forth and you're having like debate and things are getting a little bit amped up. You take a breath and you release. Ideally, you go through some kind of low intensity movement or exercise that's going to get your frontal lobe to calm down, and actually it shuts off a little bit in certain areas. It's a phenomenon called transient hypofrontality. But you let go of the problem and you let your brain just kind of relax, and your brain waves actually slow down. You get a chemical called nitric oxide that flushes out the stress chemicals that have been building, and you start to get more dopamine, more anandamide and endorphins that make you feel good, and then you drop into the flow state. And oftentimes you're going to have like this inspiration. Once your brain starts like going to work, your subconscious mind starts going to work, it'll solve the problem for you. You just had to let go of it,
Yeah. You're
right?
not fighting with it anymore.
100%. Yeah. That's why we have inspiration, our best ideas in the shower, or when we're about to fall asleep, or when we're on a long walk. Soon as the problem leaves our mind and we're thinking about something else. This is why daydreaming is so powerful and why we need to be bored more. Because when you're bored, you're not idle. Your brain is working. It's just below your conscious awareness, right? So we don't have enough of that these days. So that's so key. And then you can drop into that flow state. And then we got to remember, we always have to recover because flow is very demanding, very energy demanding. So let's talk a little bit about the triggers that you can use.
Please.
And I'll give you like 3 or 4 that are the most important. And number one, by the way, all of these triggers that we talk about, they work 2 ways. They either raise dopamine and norepinephrine, which are our focusing chemicals. They help us pay attention and lock on the task, which is paramount of importance. Or they work in 2 ways. So raise dopamine, norepinephrine, or they lower cognitive load. So less to worry about or think about, more focus and attention. That's kind of how they work. Okay. All right. So probably the golden rule of flow states for anything that we do, any task, is the challenge skills balance. Simply put, you need to challenge yourself just a little bit outside of your skill level. So if you're brand new at something, you got to start very easy. If you're very skilled, you need to push yourself just a little bit harder in order to find that perfect level of arousal to where you have to pay attention. And if you think about this, it makes perfect sense. Like, what are our Jim Rohn's like saying around the 5 people, like the most important people are the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? That's who you become. And if those people are not like just a little bit beyond your current level, then you're in the wrong spot. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. All these self-help ideas, all these personal development ideas are like all about this idea that growth sits just outside of your comfort zone. Flow sits just outside of your current skill level, because it's an evolutionary mechanism to increase your performance so that you become more skilled. Therefore, you better chance of survival.
Yeah.
So if you can modify up or down the challenge level, and here's the idea, if it's too hard and too challenging, you're going to get into the realm of anxiety, like frustration, anxiety, and you don't want to do it.
Yeah, I know.
That's too
I've been there.
challenging. You got to bring it
I've been there
down.
myself.
On the other hand, if you're way too skilled for the current challenge, you're going to be bored. You're going to distract yourself. That's usually what happens. So can you move up and down the challenge level to match or go just above your current skill level? And we can talk about more ideas about that, or examples. But another couple triggers that are so important. Number 1 is clear goals. And I'm going to put immediate feedback in with clear goals. Okay. I want your goal for what you're trying to accomplish so clear that there is no ambiguity whatsoever, and even down to the level of detail where you know exactly each step to take in order to get there. Because any ambiguity and your brain can start to go into this mode of divergent thinking. Well, it's like, well, I need to go do this thing, or I need to research that before I start, or what about that one thing? No, you can't do that. For me, when I'm going to write something like an email or a blog post or something, I will go to the level of detail to where I'm like, open Notion, write title. Here's an example. Write the opening paragraph and then use these 3 supporting arguments. You're going to write 750 words, right? Like stupid level of detail. So there's no second guessing what is the next step.
'Cause
It
I
doesn't
think
always
as well,
have to be that detailed, but
it's a great way of controlling that sense of overwhelm as well, particularly if you're coming up across it is gonna challenge you a little bit and push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, which can be a little bit scary, and you can feel a bit overwhelmed, and it's at that point you almost want to run away in the opposite direction, but you've got to sit down and say, "No, we'll just take it one step at a time, just do one small thing and get it done."
yes, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's reducing cognitive load in that way. And then every time you accomplish these little steps, you get a little more dopamine, a little bit more focusing chemicals, and it starts to flow, right? That's kind of the idea. In sports, it's already built in, which is beautiful. You hit the ball or you didn't. You made the shot or you didn't, right? And that's the immediate feedback. The goal is make the shot. The feedback is you did or you didn't. And that's what's missing a lot of times in the knowledge worker realm is we don't get feedback until our quarterly performance review, right? That's not enough. We need more feedback. Like when I put something out on social media and I get crickets,
Yeah.
it hurts, but that's feedback. Nobody cares, right? Try again. So some things have a feedback built in, but sometimes they don't. And so you might need to play with how can I get feedback quickly? Because the quicker you get the feedback, the quicker you can make changes and the quicker you can start to progress. So we've got challenge, skills, balance, clear goals, and immediate feedback. The last one is risk. This is such a powerful trigger that it's worth talking about because in my work, I tend to work with a lot of athletes. Evolved athlete kind of comes with the brand. Even though I work with a lot of cognitive athletes, I work a lot with executives, business owners and entrepreneurs, parents, where most of the time I'm going to choose my language carefully here. They are athletes, but they're not competing at a super high level. Otherwise, I could say that their priority is not their athletic endeavor. Their priority now is their business, their cognitive sport, being the best parent they can be, like crushing this business. But they also play pickleball and golf, right? And they played college basketball or something like that. That's like the general person I work with. But I forgot why I brought that up.
It's okay.
Who cares? It wasn't that important, I guess.
It'll come back to you in a minute.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. But these type of folks, they're often like dealing with that mindset and that, maybe chronic pain, usually chronic pain, but they're dealing with that old mindset of always pushing through and used to have flow more often, but they're struggling to find it now.
Yeah.
And they're kind of blocking themselves in that struggle phase. So we can tune these triggers. Oh, that's what it was. It was the risk trigger. They're more tuned to looking for risk in a physical fashion. Take the action adventure sport athlete. That's a perfect example. Like I get flow when I do scary stuff. So I got to keep upping the scare level, which is more and more risk, which if you keep extrapolating that out, it's usually not a good ending. There's usually a big injury or in some cases, death, right? So that's not ideal. And that's not a good place to be, is to always pushing that risk trigger. But we can tune that and we can take other risks that are not so harmful to our body or our life, our mortality. Take reputational risk or financial risk. Those are easy, good ones that can really drive a person into flow. An easy example is lately I was trying to develop this habit and I was really struggling with it. And so I made a bet with one of my clients that if I did not do this habit every day for 7 days, I would pay her an amount of money that was scary to me. Now, a year ago, I would have paid a lot more money because more money would have been scarier. But now that I have triplets, and they're like 18 months old, my financial risk tolerance has gone down a lot. So it took less money for me to risk, for me to get the payoff and the flow, right? So we can tune that risk dial all the time. Take public speaking as another high risk to our reputation, like being ostracized from the group and rejected from the group is like a death sentence for a human being because we're such social animals. That's why public speaking is so scary. So you can leverage that, right? And you can tune that risk dial up and down with something like public speaking to find more flow. So tuning the risk dial, the challenge, skills, balance, clear goals, and immediate feedback. These are really powerful ways to start to tune your environment and the tasks that you engage in every day in order to find more flow. And when you find more flow, you find more flow. Flow begets flow. It gets easier to get into it. You're more aware of it. You can sustain it for longer. And it's just kind of an exponential thing from that.
Yeah. I love that idea because it just makes everything so much easier. And once you know how to get into your flow state, everything becomes easier because you can automatically switch it on. So look, Brandon, just to sort of wind things up a little bit, someone wants the top things. If someone's really struggling now and they want to be able to, because I know you have a 21-day program, don't you? Is
I
that
do, yeah.
possible that someone can really get themselves out of this stuck within that length of time? Or is this something that they really need to work on for a longer period?
No, in my experience with, and we didn't even really go into the applied neurology part of all of this, but that's kind of the foundation of everything that I do. The old, I used to call it Neuro Flow because it was really the marriage of applied neurology or neuro training and flow state coaching. And that method that I developed is baked into this 21-day breakout program. And I've kind of distilled it all into 21 days, and it's all the most important and powerful tools and techniques and teachings in under 20 minutes a day. Most of them are around 15 minutes, each of these videos. And then you try some exercises and you really, it's about building momentum because once the ball is rolling downhill, if you maintain that momentum, you will break free. And I named it the breakout program because it's all about breaking out of the cycle of pain and plateau. Once you get that first breakthrough and you have the tools in place, then it's just about consistency. And that's just been my experience with working with the nervous system and brain specifically and intentionally and making flow the goal. Then once you have those tools and techniques in place, then everything else starts to take care of itself. And the nervous system is the most adaptable and fastest changing system of any system of the body, which is why 21 days has been the perfect amount for most people to get in that momentum. And then from there, you kind of choose your own adventure. It's kind of built that way. So, it is the perfect entry point. That's what I've been trying to develop over the past few years is like, how do I get people into momentum in the least amount of time possible with the most important and impactful tools to get you out of pain, to break through the plateaus and the cycle of burnout and into momentum towards flow. So that's why it was developed.
And I think it's really key as well, because often when we talk about pain and inflammation, we're talking about joints, muscles, mechanical things.
Hmm.
And people always do forget the nervous system because that's where everything begins and ends, really. So
Yeah,
you spoke about it earlier about, your central nervous system is getting feedback from your external environment. And then that kind of sends the messages to the rest of the body to produce whatever it needs to produce, gives them instructions. You need to do this, you need to do that. And therefore your body takes it on board and executes the movement, the hormone release or whatever it is. So I think that
exactly right.
this
Yeah.
is what people forget. And they sort of, always think they sort of get some kind of confused between the brain and the mind. And it's
Mm,
kind of they're kind of separate. They're not for me, then they're separate things. Your mind is experiencing everything
yeah,
outside and it's giving that feedback to your brain to then send the messages to the body. So if you're having a struggle, a stressful situation or whatever it is in your external environment, that is then feeding in and potentially why you're getting problems internally. I know if it goes on over a long period of time, it
exactly.
can lead to really chronic conditions. I mean, I'm
Yep.
simplifying it. You'd be able to explain it in much
But that's
better
well
than I
put.
would.
No, that's very well put. You're exactly right. It's all an output from the nervous system. And the nervous system is the governing system of all systems. So you mentioned hormones. I would throw in there your immune system. Everything is an output, including the mind and the thoughts that we have. Those are outputs from your brain. And if your brain is stuck in survival mode, you're going to have negative thoughts, protective thoughts that are not real expansive and goal oriented, right? But if we can regulate the nervous system, take it back towards flow and performance and reduce the threat that it's perceiving, then we get better mindset,
Yeah.
more positive thoughts, and better immune function, better hormonal function, all of the
And this is why changing your environment externally and internally is really important. People really need to be aware that that is quite a crucial part of it. You got to change your
yeah,
external environment and what you're thinking, what you're seeing, and how that feels to you. So that then you can start getting the good stuff internally and, getting back to homeostasis, if you like, just settling everything down and switching on that parasympathetic nervous system. So look, Brandon, this has been wonderful. Now, how does everyone, if they want to find out a little bit more about your programs or working with you or find out more about yourself, where can they go? Where's the best place to find out about you?
yeah. So I hang out online a little bit. Evolvedathlete.coach is my website. You can check out my programs, learn a bit more about myself and neuro training and flow states. And you can also follow me on Instagram at I am Brandon Day, all one word. I also have a free community on School, the platform, skool.com/evolved.
Brilliant.
Those are my top 3 spots where I hang out the most when I'm not hanging out with little toddler triplets.
I can't believe you got triplets.
Me either. I always say this too, if you wanna see flow states in action, effortless flow states, you watch a child play.
Yeah. Maybe we need to get back. We need to play more. We've got away from all of that. We've got away
Yep,
from all of that, I
I
think.
agree.
We're not playing enough. And I
I
think,
agree.
particularly as we get older, we forget to play, even adult play. It's have
Yep.
fun, take that time out, go have fun and just get away. And you do come back and able to think and reset and you'll be much clearer.
Mhm.
I've started doing that more. I've started to take my Sundays as, no,
Nice.
this is the day. I'm just going to have a day to think. I'm going to do what I fancy doing, but I'm not going to make any particular plans and just see where it goes.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today. I've absolutely found this fascinating. I've learned so much more about
Yeah.
flow states and getting into flow states. So I think I'll go and have
Yeah, good.
practice myself. I think we all
Alright.
benefit us all. The whole world needs to get into a better flow state at the moment. But
It
thank
would
you
be
so much for
solve a
joining
lot of
me.
problems. Thank you, Julia.
It's
This was a
been
pleasure.
great. Thank you. And I'm sure everybody else has really found it fascinating today. We'll learn something really important they
Alright.
can take forward for themselves in their own life. So thank you to Brandon and thank you to everyone who's been joining us and tuning in today. And we'll see you next time on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Thank you.